Uh, I've been thinking a lot about the Florida shooting, the Orlando shooting, the Vegas shooting, the Fort Lauderdale shooting, all of these different massacres and awful acts. And while I thought about those, I asked myself, besides firearms, why is this still happening? Why are we getting these people who decide to go out, act evil, um, and just wreck the lives of those around them, who feel that there is more worth in being the bad guy as opposed to the good guy? And then I had an epiphany where I said, well, I thought about it. You will see countless films about various serial killers, a couple about these different massacres or spree individuals, but you'll never see one about the guy that just goes to work every day and is, a regular individual. Sometimes that might happen, but it's of a much smaller margin. A good case in point would be, everybody remembers Columbine, um, and the various ways in which that has been involved in pop culture in the near 2 decades since it happened. But one has to ask themselves, for every different product that comes out of that, whether it's some game that's based around that or some scene in some film or various mentioning of it in pop culture, how many films are we seeing about the victims that were in that event, other than the one they had about Rachel Scott 2 years ago? And I guess it kind of served to present this narrative that the person and the event that of this massacre are going to be more well remembered or more paid attention to where it almost completely wrecks any way of the victim of this event being remembered for anything other than their gruesome demise. I'd rather see a film about Brought Vulture, one of my various users that comments on my stuff, or VVS, than I would about someone that goes out and just acts in a horrible way. Because I think behavior that is conducive to actually trying to speak about something and address a social ill and be of decency in trying to engage an individual uh, and conduct their way in life should be rewarded over this other nonsense that we've seen be perpetuated by the various forms of media. And this really ties back into the idea that when you go out and you commit such horrid acts that are unthinkable and just by most of us to be considered disturbing, you're going to get a very sizable group of people who will say, hey, this is interesting. And look, there's nothing wrong with being fascinated by how these macabre figures act. These people that go out and do these crimes. Um, because a lot of times when you give it that fascination, you can find a solution. You can say, well, this person was this way because of this and that. Let's do something about this and that. But when you go and say, oh, that guy just works a job for 5 decades, or this woman just, happened to be a matriarch for 30 or 40 years, nobody wants to hear about their stories. That's when you create a situation where someone who feels overlooked by society is going to think to themselves, well, what's the point of me being a good Samaritan? For example, I could have one of my subscribers go and run for Congress and win, and end up being this really great legislator for however many years, or actually make an impact in their local community, and they would have a much smaller chance of getting a film or a mini series or a novel about their life than the person who goes out and just starts uh, shooting up some school or some airport or some hospital or somewhere of just filled with people that we actually, value as productive members of society. But we also, in claiming that we value them, don't to the extent of trying to preserve what they've done in a cinematic way. Many of these different awful events, whether it's the Titanic or the films about these killers, they're going to be seen or watched 100 or 200 years from now. We're always going to be able to go back to it and say, wow, this was how this happened. This is a dramatization of these events that really transpired. And you'll get people who will say, well, They didn't make anything about the guys that were just going to school and learning and trying to be teachers and doctors and scientists and politicians and all kind of other professions that have some level of merit behind them. Why don't I just go out and act out in a manner that is conducive to ruining the lives of those around me, and I'll definitely get something of this magnitude, or at least have a higher chance of it. And ask yourself, would they really be wrong for thinking that? Would they really be out of their mind and just off their rocker for saying, well, you know what? This life of decency and compassion and concern and care for my fellow man, that's not going to get me a film. That's not going to have some, Academy Award actor portraying me. That's not going to have some historians attempting to seek out files and information about me so they can preserve it in a novel. No, no way. The only way I can get remembered is if I have, some awful streak of bodies piled up behind me. And it's scary that they're more likely, if you are a murderer, whether you're a mass shooter or a spree killer, you are more likely to have a film made about you than some senator that's in office for 30 or 40 years, or some representative, or even most presidents. And I really want this to not fall on deaf ears. If I knew more about VVS or Brought Vulture, I'd be, or some other subscriber. I'm just naming the ones that I can think just always come back and comment on stuff. I'd be more likely to want something made about their lives than those that just go out and commit these travesties. And sometimes it's good to put that stuff on film. I'm not saying we should cancel that practice. What I am conveying is that there needs to be a movement or some company that is dedicated to creating films about people of decency and people that actually act in a manner that is ethical. And there needs to be a push for that. I want to see a world where when there's some kind of shooting where all these victims get massacred, which unfortunately we're going to keep having, I want to see a film about the lives of every single victim, as opposed to just that one event and maybe some stuff on the perpetrator and that's it. Or better yet, if they make a film about that event, why not make it about the victims leading up to the event? That way we can kind of humanize them and actually start showing their characteristics on screen. A lot of these massacres are not so far past us in terms of how much time has passed, to where we could actually go and meet with family members and say, hey, how was this person? How'd they act? Write something with me on creating a legacy for that person beyond being the victim of some awful act. If I knew the lives of most of these subscribers of mine who actually comment and act nice and have something good to say and just make me feel nicer about trying to go out and create content, I would actively work with them to write at least a screenplay about their story. Because that's conducive to showing, look at this. I was nice to this one person. They took so much of an interest in me that they just wanted to make a whole film about me. They took the time out of their days and months to just go and start writing about me because I was just decent. I did one all right thing, and now my story is interested in being told by this one person. Even if it doesn't make it all the way there, I'd still try. Because I'd feel that that individual meant something to me on the scale of doing something that is good. And this is not above us. We've had films like that in the past. We need to have more of them. We need to have 10 or 11 of those a year, 12, 13, 14, 15. Because people have so many different stories and so many things that happen to them behind the scenes. And I just feel that if we actually try to convey their information as opposed to that of individuals who go out and commit egregious acts, we're more likely to see the idea that yes, you can be remembered if you're someone that wants to do the best in terms of what is right for those who surround you. So I hope this made someone think. I just feel that we're too busy trying to memorialize and glamorize these various evildoers, and we don't give enough attention to those who contribute to our society. So thank you.